November 12, 1944, Camp Aliceville, Alabama. Helga Brandt stared at the jar in her hands like it might explode. The glass was cool against her palms. Inside sat a thick, brown paste that looked like something scraped from the underside of a tank. It smelled strange, nutty, sweet, wrong. Across the mess hall, 33 other German women prisoners of war held identical jars with identical expressions of confusion and quiet horror. Then an American guard walked past, twisted open her own jar, and scooped out a spoonful with her bare fingers. She ate it, just like that. No bread, no shame, no hesitation. She smiled like she'd tasted heaven. Helga's hands started shaking. Not from fear, from the slow, creeping realization that everything the Reich had told her about America might have been a lie. Before we go further, if you're enjoying this deep dive into an untold corner of World War II history, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers around the world. Now let's get back to Alabama, 1944, where a simple jar of peanut butter was about to dismantle an entire propaganda machine, one spoonful at a time. Helga had survived Rommel's Afrika Korps. She'd pulled shrapnel from screaming soldiers in field hospitals under canvas tents baking in 120-degree heat. She'd eaten rations so moldy they turned her stomach inside out. She'd watched men die with sand in their lungs, and nothing but more sand for graves. She thought she'd seen everything war could throw at a person, but she had never seen this. Americans eating brown paste like it was normal, like it was good. And that's when the first crack appeared in the wall she'd built around her beliefs. Because if America was starving, if their economy had collapsed, if their people were desperate and broken like the newspapers back home said, then why were they making butter out of peanuts? The train had arrived 3 days earlier. Metal wheels screeching against iron rails, the sound echoing across the humid Alabama countryside. 34 German women stepped onto American soil for the first time. They were nurses, signals operators, secretaries, women who had served the Wehrmacht in roles that didn't require pulling triggers but still put them in uniform, still made them enemies. They expected cruelty. They expected suffering. The propaganda back home had been clear. Americans hated Germans, their camps were brutal. Survival would be a daily struggle. But Camp Aliceville didn't look like suffering. The barracks were wooden but solid. The beds had real mattresses. The showers ran hot. There was a medical clinic, a recreation yard, even a small library. Helga walked through it all in a daze, waiting for the trap to spring. It sprang at dinner. Not with violence, but with abundance. The mess hall smelled like food. Real food. Bread baking, soup simmering, something sweet in the air. They sat at long wooden tables, and American kitchen workers, some of them women, not much older than Helga, brought out plates. Vegetable soup with actual vegetables. White bread, soft and fresh, still warm. Canned peaches and syrup so sweet it made Helga's teeth ache. Meat that was identifiable as meat, not the gray mystery substance they'd choked down in North Africa. And on every table, those jars. Brown paste and glass containers with paper labels that read 2 words in English. Peanut butter. No one touched them. The German women ate everything else, scraped their bowls clean, ate every crumb of bread. But the jars sat untouched, like landmines no one wanted to trigger. Helga watched the American staff. They spread the paste on bread. They ate it with spoons straight from the jar. They closed their eyes and smiled like they were tasting childhood. A guard named Betty noticed the confusion. She walked over, opened a jar, and held it out. "Peanut butter," she said slowly, like she was teaching children. "It's good. You'll love it." Then she scooped out a heaping spoonful and ate it raw. The German women stared. One whispered in German, "They feed us axle grease and smile while they do it." But Helga noticed something that made her blood run cold. The Americans weren't eating different food. They had the same bread, the same soup, the same jars of brown paste. There was no separate officers' mess, no hidden better rations. Guards and prisoners ate the same meals. That never happened. Not in German camps. Not anywhere she'd ever been. Power showed itself in food. But here the lines were blurred in ways that made no sense. That night, lying in her bunk under a blanket that was actually warm, Helga couldn't sleep. Her body was exhausted, but her mind kept circling back to those jars. Why did Americans eat that stuff with such joy? Why did they give it to prisoners like it was nothing special? And if they were feeding enemies this well, what were they feeding their own people? The newspapers back home had said America was collapsing. Red lines in every city. Unemployment crushing families. An economy held together by Jewish bankers squeezing the last wealth from a dying nation. But starving nations don't make butter out of peanuts. She stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a quiet voice whispered a question she didn't want to answer. What else did they lie about? The next morning came gray and cool. Helga woke to the smell of coffee drifting through the barracks. Real coffee, not the burnt barley substitute they'd drunk for years. She dressed slowly, watching the other women. Some were already talking about the food, about how much there was, about how the Americans seemed to have everything. At breakfast, the jars reappeared. Same tables, same mysterious brown paste. The women ate their eggs and bread and ignored the peanut butter like it might bite back. Then Ingrid, a 22-year-old signals operator from Hamburg with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, reached for a jar. The table went silent. Ingrid twisted the lid. It popped with a soft hiss. The smell rose immediately, rich and nutty and strange. She spread a thin layer on bread, so thin you could almost see through it. Everyone watched. She took the smallest possible bite, chewed. Her face showed nothing. Then her eyebrows rose. "We'll?" Helga asked. Ingrid took another bite, bigger this time. She chewed slowly, her expression shifting from suspicion to surprise to something close to wonder. "It's good," she said quietly. "It's salty and sweet at the same time. It sticks in your mouth. It fills you up." She paused, searching for words. "It tastes like energy, like strength." That was all it took. Hands reached for jars. Lids twisted open. The nutty smell spread across the mess hall like a secret being shared. One woman tried it and nodded. Another smiled for the first time since capture. A third, a nurse named Britta, who hadn't spoken in weeks, tasted it and whispered, "Mein Gott." Within 10 minutes, every jar was empty. 47 jars consumed in a single breakfast. American kitchen staff stood watching with wide eyes. "Yesterday they wouldn't touch it," one cook said. "Today they ate everything we had." Dorothy, the young kitchen worker who'd first demonstrated peanut butter, just laughed. "Peanut butter does that." It converts everyone eventually. Helga sat back, her stomach fuller than it had been in months. Her body recognized what her mind was still processing: real nutrition, protein, fat, calories, food that could keep you alive. She looked around the table at the other women, all of them eating like they'd discovered treasure. And in a way, they had. Not treasure, truth. The truth that abundance existed, that it was real, that they'd been lied to about everything. A supply sergeant checked his inventory that afternoon. The women's section had consumed nearly 3 times the expected amount. He wrote a confused note in his report. German female prisoners have developed extreme preference for peanut butter, requesting increased supply. The camp's records, now archived in the National Archives in Washington, show that peanut butter consumption in the women's section jumped 340% in the first week. A statistic so unusual that administrators requested confirmation. They thought it was a clerical error. It wasn't. The next day, the mess hall made an announcement. Due to high demand, peanut butter would be rationed, 1 jar per table, per meal. The German women protested immediately. 1 jar is not enough, Ingrid said through the translator. We need more. The American officer looked genuinely confused. Yesterday you refused to eat it. Ingrid met his eyes. Yesterday we didn't understand. Today we understand. We want more. Within 2 weeks, peanut butter had rewritten the entire economy of the women's section. It started small. A woman named Gerda offered her dessert to Ingrid in exchange for half a spoonful. The trade happened under the table like a drug deal, but secrets don't stay secret in a prison camp. By the 3rd week, a complete shadow economy had formed with peanut butter as the currency. The women called it bronze gold, brown gold, more valuable than cigarettes, more valuable than soap, more valuable than the small chocolates that occasionally appeared in Red Cross packages. Helga watched this economy grow with fascination. She'd studied economics before the war, knew the theories of supply and demand, but she never expected to see those principles play out over jars of American nut paste. The math was simple and brutal. Each table received 1 jar per meal. 3 meals meant 3 jars per day, shared among 8 to 10 women. Roughly 3 tablespoons per person. Not enough. Never enough. So the trading began. Cigarettes, which had ruled the camp's black market, fell before peanut butter like infantry before tanks. A pack of 20 cigarettes could only buy 2 tablespoons. Within a month, cigarettes had lost half their value. Camp records from December 1944 show cigarette trades dropped 62%, while food-based trades increased dramatically. Women who worked in the kitchen became the richest prisoners in camp. They saw the jars first. Sometimes a lid was loose. Sometimes a jar was slightly damaged. These imperfect jars disappeared before they reached the mess hall, vanishing into apron pockets like contraband gold. Helga heard stories that would have been funny if they weren't so desperate. One woman traded her wedding ring for 6 jars. Another traded a gold bracelet she'd hidden from the guards. A third offered to wash another prisoner's clothes for a month in exchange for daily peanut butter portions. We've become crazy, Britta said one evening, spreading her ration portion as thin as paint, trading gold for groundnuts. Our families would be ashamed, but the hunger was real. Not just physical hunger, emotional hunger. The peanut butter represented something beyond calories. It represented comfort in a foreign land, pleasure in captivity, a small daily joy in a place designed to have none. Maria Schmidt was 41, the oldest woman in the camp. She'd been an administrative secretary for a Wehrmacht general in Tunisia. She kept a detailed diary throughout her imprisonment. Years later, her granddaughter donated it to a historical archive in Munich. One entry from December 1944 reads, "I traded my mother's earrings today, silver with small pearls. She gave them to me when I was 18. I traded them for 4 jars of the American peanut butter. I don't regret it. When I eat it, I feel human again. My mother would understand. She always said food feeds the soul, not just the body." The American guards noticed the trading but rarely interfered. Some participated themselves. Guard Betty became known for accepting peanut butter as payment for small favors. Extra time in the recreation yard, a warmer blanket, a newer pillow. "I shouldn't do it," Betty admitted to another guard. "But have you seen how happy it makes them? They light up like kids at Christmas." The camp commander, Colonel Harold Morrison, documented the phenomenon in his monthly report to Washington. German female prisoners have developed unusual attachment to peanut butter rations. This attachment has created a stable internal economy that reduces conflicts and improves cooperation. Recommend maintaining current supply levels as morale management tool. Washington approved increased shipments. By January 1945, the women's section received 40% more peanut butter than standard POW allocations. Happy prisoners caused fewer problems, but something deeper was happening beneath the surface of trades and hoarding. The question started quietly, whispered between bunks after lights out. If they lied about peanut butter, what else was a lie? The camp library became an unexpected battlefield for truth. American authorities allowed prisoners access to books and magazines. The goal was education and rehabilitation. The result was demolition. Life magazine arrived monthly. The women saw photographs of American factories producing tanks and planes in quantities beyond comprehension. In 1944 alone, American factories produced 96,318 aircraft. Germany produced 39,807. The difference wasn't marginal. It was catastrophic. They saw photographs of American farms stretching to horizons. Golden wheat, green vegetables, orchards heavy with fruit. Cattle by the thousands grazing on grasslands bigger than German states. They saw photographs of American families eating dinner. Tables loaded with food. Children drinking milk from tall glasses. Mothers serving portions that would feed a German family for 3 days. One woman pointed at a picture and said, "This cannot be real. It's American propaganda," Guard Dorothy overheard through the translator. She laughed without cruelty. "Propaganda? Honey, those pictures are from regular families. That's how we live. My family had a farm in Kansas. We threw away more food than you probably ate in a month. Not because we were wasteful, because we had too much. The concept was almost impossible to process. In Germany, having enough was a fantasy. Having extra was impossible. Having too much was simply not a category that existed in daily life. But Americans had too much. So much they made butter from peanuts and gave it to enemy prisoners. Maria wrote in her diary, "Today I read that American farmers are paid not to grow food. The government gives them money to leave fields empty. They have so much food that growing more would cause problems. Meanwhile, German children eat soup made from turnips and hope. What kind of world is this? The psychological impact was severe. Camp medical records show a sharp increase in depression among German prisoners during early 1945, not because of mistreatment, because of realization. Dr. Helen Marsh, the camp's American physician, noted in her log, "Several German women have requested treatment for what they describe as confusion sickness. They report difficulty sleeping, loss of appetite, despite adequate food, and persistent feelings of shame. Upon examination, these symptoms appear connected to cognitive dissonance between previous beliefs and current observations. They're experiencing fundamental worldview collapse. Worldview collapse. A clinical term for watching everything you believed burn to ashes while you're still standing in the fire. Helga experienced it herself. She lay awake reviewing her memories, the speeches by Nazi officials, the newspaper headlines, the radio broadcasts, the films showing American poverty and German strength, all of it built on lies. She remembered believing that American soldiers would be easy to defeat, that German discipline would overcome American weakness, that God favored the righteous and the war would end in German victory. Now she ate American peanut butter in an American camp while American planes destroyed German cities. "We were children," she told Ingrid one night. "They told us stories and we believed them like children believe fairy tales. Little Red Riding Hood and the Weak Americans." Spring came to Camp Aliceville, with warm winds, green fields, and birds singing beyond the fences. For the German women it was their first spring in captivity, and something unexpected grew beside the flowers. Friendship. It began with small kindnesses. Guards brought extra jam. Women learned to make peanut butter sandwiches. Photographs were shared. Homes remembered, grief quietly acknowledged. These gestures slowly softened the line between captor and captive. Guard Betty, a 34-year-old mother from Mobile, grew close to several prisoners. Her husband built destroyers. Her brother had died in Italy. Yet she told Helga she hated the war, not Germans. Looking at the women, she saw people caught inside forces larger than themselves. The honesty stunned Helga more than anger ever could. In April 1945, English classes began. 47 women enrolled, not for reform, but survival. Maria practiced nightly, listening to radio broadcasts and copying unfamiliar words. "Language is power," she said. Her diary noted a new word, plenty. Americans used it often. In German, she wrote, there was only enough. On May 8th, Germany surrendered. Americans celebrated. The prisoners listened quietly. That night, peanut butter filled every table, jars open and overflowing. Betty raised one in a toast to peace. Helga answered, carefully, to peace, and to plenty. The war ended, but captivity did not. Repatriation took years. Letters from Germany spoke of ruins and hunger. Helga read them while eating peanut butter on white bread, the contrast unbearable. In early 1947, 31 women were sent home. At a farewell dinner, guards urged them to take as much peanut butter as they could carry. It was packed like treasure. Germany was shattered. Cities lay broken, people thin and exhausted. Helga shared her peanut butter with her mother, who wept at its richness. Later came the Berlin airlift, American planes feeding former enemies with the same brown paste. Peanut butter won no battles, but it destroyed propaganda. Abundance proved lies false. For those women, truth arrived quietly, thick and filling, and once tasted it could never be forgotten. It changed minds, rebuilt trust, crossed borders, and reminded everyone that simple human kindness can undermine hatred more effectively than force and history everywhere.